Hello everyone. Today we're working on Module 4, Lesson 18. And again, we'll be relating decimal and fraction multiplication like we did last night. Let's start off by multiplying 3 2/10 by 2 1/10. And before we do anything, we're going to estimate what the product would be. And I know that 3 2/10 is pretty close to 3. And 2 1/10 is pretty close to 2. So I'm going to say that my answer should be around 6. Now I'm going to solve this problem two different ways. On the left, I'm going to turn the decimals into fractions, and on the right, I'm going to multiply them using unit form in decimals. So 3 2/10 is the same as 32/10, and 2 1/10 is the same as 21/10. So I'm going to set this up as 32 times 21 over 10 times 10. Now to set it up in unit form, 3 2/10 is 32 tenths. It's the same as the fraction, it's just spelling it out. Over here we can see the 32 tenths, and on the right I'm just spelling it out. 32 tenths, and I'm multiplying that times 21 tenths. And now I have to do my multiplication, and I'm going to go ahead and do the multiplication on the right side first because I have to figure out what 21 times 32 is anyway. So 1 times 32 is 32, and 2 times 32 will be 64, and I have to put a 0 placeholder there. When I add it together, I have 672, and my new unit is actually hundredths because tenths times tenths equals hundredths. Now I'm going to go back to the right, and I've already done my multiplication of 32 times 21 up here. So I know that this is going to be 672 over 100. So this is really just the same way of saying, a different way of saying the same thing. 672 over 100 is the same as 672 hundredths. Now on the left, every fraction is a division problem. So if I divide 672 by 100, I get 6 whole hundreds out of that. And I have 72 hundredths left. And on the right, if I have 672 hundredths, that means that I'm going to put my decimal place. So I have hundredths. I should have tenths and hundredths to the right. 6.72. Now, in this case, I don't have to reduce my fraction to the simplest form because we want it to stay in the hundredths. We want it to, since we want it to relate it to the decimal form. So my last step is actually just to turn it into a decimal as well, so that I see that I have the same answer on both sides. All right, now it's your turn to try one. You're going to multiply 3 2/10 times 44 hundredths. I want you to do it both ways. I want you to turn the decimals into fractions and multiply them, and then turn your fractional answer into a decimal. Remember, you don't have to make your answer into simplest form because we want it to be in tenths or hundreds or thousandths in order to turn it back into decimal form. And then you're also going to use the unit form of the decimal to multiply, and your answer should be the same each time you do it. Now, I know that many of you are out there going, I'm not going to do this twice, and I'm not there to watch you, but I'd really like you to try doing it both ways, because you're going to be required to do that on the problem set tomorrow. Remember, you're going to write your answer in decimal form on the Edpuzzle quiz. All right, let's try something that is just slightly different than what we have just done. 2 6/10 times 4/10. Now, the thing that we want to think about is that an estimation, and 2 6/10 is around 3, and 4/10 is close to 5/10. So 5/10 is another way of saying a half. So my answer should be around half of 2 6/10. I'm going to think of it that way. And so it should be somewhere around 1 3/10, because that's about half of 2 6/10. And you'll notice that the answer is actually smaller than the first factor, and that's because I'm multiplying here by 4/10, which is a number that's smaller than 1. And anytime we multiply by a number that's smaller than 1, then our answer is going to be smaller than the other factor. Now, on the left, I'm going to change this into fraction form. So 2 6/10 is the same as 26/10. That would be 2 wholes. 20/10 is 2 wholes, and then 6 more tenths. It's 26. And I'm going to multiply that by 4/10, which is pretty straightforward. And 26 times 4 is 104 over 100. 4 times 6 is 24, carry the 2, 4 times 2 is 8, and I add on that extra 2 and I get 10. So 104 over 100, and then of course, instead of thinking about what simplest form is, I'm going to turn that into a fraction. 100 will go into 104 one whole time, and by fraction I meant decimal. 104 will is going to be 1 4/100 written as a decimal. So let's go over to the right side of the screen, and we will take a look at 26/10, and we're going to multiply that by 4/10. 4 times 6 is 24, and I'll be carrying the 2 over, and 4 times 2 is 8, plus that 2 will be 10, so I end up with 104. And then if I multiply tenths times tenths, I will get hundredths, because every time I multiply by tenths, I have to move over to the right one place in that place value chart I have in my mind. 104 hundredths, that means I have 1 whole and 4 hundredths left over. And I can see that I have matching answers. So while you may think it's a waste of time to do it 2 ways, it's actually a great way to check yourself. If you have a method that you prefer, doing it the other way is a great way to check yourself and make sure that you have the decimal point in the right place. Okay, here's a similar problem for you to do. 3 7/10 times 2/10. Please do it 2 ways. First, by turning the decimals into fractions, and then turning your fractional answer back into a decimal, and then use the unit form to multiply the decimals, and make sure that you turn that back into standard form, and you should get the same answer either way. Don't forget to estimate what your answer is going to be before you begin, and check at the end to see if your answer is reasonable. Okay, let's try one more, and I'm going to see if you have discovered a pattern. And there are many of you who may have already known the shortcut that the pattern is going to lead us to, but hopefully some of you will be discovering it for the first time. So our next problem is 3 1/10 times 1 4/10. And so 3 1/10 is around 3. 1 4/10 is around 1. So my answer is going to be about 3. Should not be 300 something, or, my 3 should not be on the right side of the decimal. It should be in the ones place if I have it 3. Okay, so if I turn this into a fraction, it's going to be 31 tenths times 14 tenths. And if I do it in unit form, it will be 31 tenths. I'm just spelling it out now, the way I say it, times 14 tenths. And I'm going to go ahead and keep working on the right side, because this is where I have to do the algorithm for multi-digit multiplication anyway, so I might as well do this side first. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to put a 0 in the tens place, because this is actually 10 times 1, which is 10, and 10 times 3, which is 300. And when I add those together, 4 plus 0 is 4, 2 plus 1 is 3, 1 plus 3 is 4. And I'm going to go ahead and move over to the left side again now, because I know that it is going to be 434 over 10 times 10, which is 100. And I'm going to move back to the right, and I'm going to label this tenths times tenths equal hundreds. And now I'm going to write both of my answers in standard form as decimals. So 434 hundredths will be 4 and 34 hundredths. And 434 hundredths over here will be 4 and 34 hundredths. Now you may have noticed as we were doing these problems that the key to getting everything right, despite the fact that we're using decimals, is looking at the numbers to the right of the decimal. You can use those numbers to figure out where your decimal is going to be placed. So I know that 3.1 times 1.4, if I just think of this as 31 times 14, then my answer will be 434. I can ignore the decimals for a while, just do the math. 31 times 14, I'll get 434, and then I go back and look at my decimals. I have tenths times tenths, and that means I have hundredths. So I'm going to need 2 digits to the right of the decimal point, so I have hundredths in my answer as well. I would say this 4 and 34 hundredths, so that needs to be my unit. All right, here's the last problem for you to do this evening. 31 hundredths times 1 4/10. Please estimate your answer first. You may try the shortcut to get your answer. And then I would like you to, if you do use the shortcut, I would like you to use one of the methods that we've been using to check yourself. If you don't understand the shortcut yet, use both of the methods that we've been going over to check yourself. So good luck, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.